Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to talk a lot of sports with you, New Orleans style. We'll talk about the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll get into the New Orleans Super Bowl bid. We'll also talk a little bit about college baseball and so much more. And joining us on the panel tonight, a good friend of mine and a great friend of this show, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. Sean, welcome to the show. And as always, want to start off the show letting folks know a little bit about what you're doing. But I want to tell you, you recently did a story on a heart transplant patient, and I don't get too emotional when I'm watching the news, okay? Yeah. Other than the emotion is usually I'm angry when I'm watching the news because I'm getting ready for the next day. But I got to tell you, I had tears in my eyes. That was an incredible story. That's going to be an award-winning story before it's all said and done. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, first off, I'm like, my main beat is I cover the Saints and I cover all the sports locally, and you're just so fixated on the next thing, the next story, the next. Every now and then, it's good to get a story like that, and you just pause and you let everything just kind of fall into proper perspective. I got to give an assist to Juan Kincaid. He originally made contact with that, and I was able to kind of navigate everything and get everything done. And kudos to my bosses for letting me go to Austin to interview the heart donor's family.
Little background?
Yeah, it was a local marathon runner who had heart disease her entire life, was not allowed to play sports her entire life, on her deathbed, needed a heart transplant. She had dealt with medication her whole life. She found a match after only 2 weeks of waiting, which is it's rare for someone needing an organ. And they found a match through a 19-year-old athlete in Austin, just outside of Austin, Texas, who had tragically taken his own life. And what ended up happening was when the recipient received the heart, she had sent letters to the family. The young man's name was Cameron. His family, and it took them 4 years to respond, but they finally did. And they met for the first time. And you saw this on the video. It's at fox8live.com. Very emotional. And now these two families are connected literally through blood, through a heart, and they consider themselves family. She's now able to compete in the transplant game. She's able to run. She's able to work out. She won 2 gold medals in these games. And it just goes to show you, look, we talk about raise awareness a lot. And, sometimes when you hear that term, okay, all right, but I really didn't know anything about organ donation, and it took a story, a personal story like that for me to really understand just how personal it gets with these two families. And I can understand how there could be an awkward feeling with, the tragic loss of your son. His heart is now living, and this woman that you've never met is now able to live a healthy life, healthier than she's ever been.
Oh, yes.
And she showed gratitude. They show, the appreciation for allowing another life to go on. It's just a great story. Look, I don't say this much, but it'll restore your faith in humanity. It really will. Look, we're watching the edit bay at when we put the final draft together, and my boss looks at me, and he's got to wipe the tears off his eyes. I said, Mike, was that good? He goes, you got something there. And sure enough, the response has been great. And Jamie is the local runner, and Napolitano, and the family is Royal and Janice Burleson out of Austin, Texas. So kudos to them, because I told them before the interview, I said, look, it's going to be very emotional. Just let go. Let go and just let go. If you get emotional, it's okay. And they did, and they were phenomenal.
It was heart-wrenching, no pun intended. It tugged at your emotions, and it's just a great story. And then to see the young woman from New Orleans, how her whole life she was unable to exercise, and now she's a phenom. I mean, she exercises every single day, every moment that she can. She gets out there and works that body out, and it was a great story, and I'm telling you right now, it's going to be an award-winning story before it's all said and done. If you haven't seen it, it's at fox8live.com. It's worth the watch. It really is a great story. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Other than that, tell us a little bit about what's going on at Fox 8 with all your coverage of sports from the Saints all the way down.
Well, it's been sweeps month, so it's been pretty busy, really since the draft. That was the first week of sweeps, and that's just where we kind of do our longer form stories. So we're covering that 4, 5, 9, and 10, our sports. We also have the final play every Sunday at 9:30. 10:30. Wow, it's been a crazy month. But at 10:30, and of course, my blog is the After Further Review blog on fox8live.com.
Sean, the last few weeks since the draft, I've had reporters on that really have kind of given me their take on what the Saints have done in the draft thus far. A little bit about free agency, and I'd like to use that same format today for the audience to kind of get your take on how the Saints have done. And we'll start with Sheldon Rankins, who was the #1 pick, the 12th overall pick. Seemed to be a no-brainer pick. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that was the thing. That was the weird thing was how not weird it was draft day. You know, you always expect a surprise, a shock with the Saints. You just never know. But Sheldon Rankins was easily the top guy on a lot of mocks, and he was the guy that they picked. I can understand that the few times I've been around him now, I can understand why they liked him. He seems to have a very professional demeanor. It seems like the kind of guy you'd want. It seems like he's going to be a professional and be a leader and be a guy that's going to be productive and do all the things that you need to do, which you can never have enough of those guys. You know, it's interesting. I stood next to him, not very tall.
Really?
It stood out to me, not very tall. Reminded me immediately of Leroy Glover, because I've stood next to him a couple times, and maybe a shade over 6 foot, maybe 6'1". But as a 3-technique pass rush, I think he'll do great inside in the interior of the Saints' defensive line. It was much needed. They needed front 7 help. They got it. So I think that was the obvious choice. They didn't outthink themselves. Look what happened with Shaq Lawson.
Yes.
Okay, they didn't outthink themselves, and I think they got themselves a good pick.
Well, and that was something I was going to mention tonight, because I love the Rankins pick, but put me on a lie detector, and even then I was thinking Shaq Lawson, Shaq Lawson, Shaq Lawson. If you remember, there was a lot of talk about that shoulder leading up to the draft. Of course, he was cleared by most medical staffs. He even said that he was fine. And of course, lo and behold, now you look at the situation with Buffalo Bills, not just losing Shaq Lawson to surgery, but also Sammy Watkins gets a screw in his ankle, and it's not too good for Rex Ryan and the Buffalo Bills in kind of a must-win year for them.
Yeah, and you know, if the reports are accurate, Shaq Lawson got that with no pads, just a kind of a tackle dummy drill, like a swim move type thing. So it just goes to show you how weak the shoulder really was, and it was waiting to be injured. So that's a bad look for Buffalo. And could you have imagined if that would have happened here? I mean, it would have been. Whew. So kudos to them for not outthinking themselves and going with Sheldon Rankins.
And it surely looks like he's going to be a guy, and I'll use your terminology, which I think has caught on, a plug-and-play player, right?
I think he is a guy, even if he's not an official starter, on defense in the NFL, I mean, you rotate so much. He's going to be a guy that's going to play right away, get a lot of snaps and a lot of different packages. And I think his key, or his skill set that they want a guy that can be disruptive from the interior of the defensive line. And if you've watched his tape, he's shown that he can do that. It's just a matter of transitioning to the NFL.
And you mentioned his personality. I've read several articles since he's been drafted in which he talks about the fact that he's not a real vocal guy, not a guy that likes the spotlight on him. He's more of a workman-type player that wants to come to work, get the job done. After the transition in this locker room, that seems like a perfect fit.
Yeah, and I think he had just created a Twitter page on draft night, which is probably music to the Saints' ears, quite frankly.
And unusual in today's day and age, especially with college kids.
It kind of goes to show, you know, not really seeking the limelight. Calls himself a football junkie, and I'm sure a lot of young draftees want to say that, but it looks like in his case he kind of is, and I think that's exactly what this team needs right now.
I was surprised Michael Thomas in the second round. I think we all know that wide receiver was a need. You and I had talked about it leading up to the draft. When you look at the depth chart, there wasn't a lot of depth there, quality depth there. You were, again, undrafted free agents kind of filling out the roster there. There's no doubt in my mind that Michael Thomas will be a contributor, although, again, I felt like that they really needed to go with either offense or defensive line there. With that said, your thoughts on Michael Thomas, your thoughts on the wide receiver pick at 2?
Look, I think he's another plug and play. Both of those picks, regardless of if you thought it was the right pick at the right time, both of those guys I think will plug and play. I think Thomas, his skill set is a 6'3" guy. You know, the story of the week has been his hands and the hand yoga and the fact that he has that ability to catch the ball. But if he can work the seams, if he can work between the hash marks, he is the next Marcus Colston in terms of what they're going to ask him to do. And I think Sean Payton is smart enough, and he does this very well. He figures out what a wide receiver does well, and he puts in a package for them to do that. And I think Michael Thomas, I can understand the reservations about the pick because I think Kiaris Garrett didn't even get drafted, and he was the guy I had in the 4th round. He may have been available later in the draft, but I still think you got a plug-and-play player at round 2, which in the grand scheme of things with the recent drafts is all you can really ask for.
No, I would agree. And if you look at his college career, he's a playmaker. He is a guy that ultimately is going to make plays. He catches the ball in traffic. He's a physical guy, and he's a guy that can be counted on. Now, again, to be successful in the Saints system, you have to be a precise route runner. It'll be interesting to see, again, how that transition is from Ohio State, where they didn't throw the football a lot, to a place where New Orleans, he's going to have to block, but he's also going to be a guy that has to be in a certain place at a certain time. The timing of the route is essential.
There is no other quality a wide receiver can have in this offense than precision. Know where you're supposed to be at the time you're supposed to be there, and then when the ball is there, make the play. He doesn't lack for confidence, but I do think there's going to be a transition in terms of just football IQ you thought you have in college, especially with a simple system like Ohio State, is not the same here where you got a 3-sentence play called. I mean, that's how long a play takes to get called. So I think he's going to be a plug-and-play guy, but I think that'll be a transition as well.
Another Ohio State player, Von Bell, the Saints trade up for him to get back into the 2nd round. A guy that was looked at on that Ohio State team as a field safety, played the 2nd best wide receiver, which means that he has some coverage skills. You know, the Saints have really missed that since Darren Sharper. They went out and paid a boatload of money for Jarvis Byrd, hoping they were going to get that. They haven't gotten that up to this point. Your thoughts on Bell and your thoughts on where Bell fits in on this team this season?
Look, I thought safety was one of the more underrated needs going into the draft just because Raphael Bush is gone, Vinny Sinceri was gone, Jarvis Byrd has injury history, so those are 3 players right off the bat. I think Von Bell, I'm not in love with the idea of trading up to get him, but that's essentially their 3rd-round pick. I think he's a guy that if his skill set translates, he is the center fielder they have been waiting for, like a Darren Sharper. I mean, look, he's gone on to terrible things since, but he was the difference in 2009. I mean, the fact that he had 10 interceptions in 2009 was the difference. And this offense can 10 more possessions. That's all you really need. So I think they've wanted that guy. I think they've tried to get that guy. Obviously, they've swung for the fences to get that guy in Jarvis Byrd, but they haven't been able to get him. Hopefully, Von Bell gets that guy. But I wouldn't expect that in year 1. I think he's a guy that will transition on the field eventually. Jarvis Byrd has had health issues. We'll see. But I think Von Bell is going to be a nice pick eventually. Maybe not quite a plug-and player right away, but I think he's on the field sooner than later.
Is this the beginning of the end for Jarvis Byrd, you think, here in New Orleans? You know, I've talked about on this show, on the radio show, that, you know, they haven't utilized his contract that's been there to maybe take some money and to be able to sign another player, amortize it over the life they'll get, add more to the signing bonus, that type of situation, where we seem to go to other players and rob Peter to pay Paul to be able to bring players. They haven't done that with Byrd. They've let Bird's large contract alone, not wanting to maybe add more years to it or adding money to backload that contract. Is this a do-or-die year for Jarvis Byrd in your mind?
I think the way the contract is set up, they can get out of it rather easily. I know that last year at this time they had flipped his roster bonus into a signing bonus and spread out, which was obvious. Which the way the contract was structured, that was what they wanted to do, and it was going to happen. I think he's got to put up. I mean, he's got to be the $54 million safety they thought he was. You don't give him any more chances in the NFL. I think they're loyal to him. They want him to work out, but if it doesn't happen, or at worst, if he gets injured again, I think that would be the end of him here in New Orleans.
Both Michael Thomas and Von Bell go to Ohio State, which means they're on the quarter system, which means they cannot participate until the class graduates or class has ended. Things have changed now with Skype and the ability to be able to sit with a coach and to be able to talk back and forth in the evening time. How far do you think they will be behind? Do you think it affects them? It affected, obviously, Will Smith way back when he was drafted out of Ohio State, the late Will Smith. We've seen other players again that
Malcolm Jenkins. It took him a while.
It took him a while, no doubt.
Brandon Cooks was a quarter guy.
Andrews
as well. Pete was a quarter guy.
And it slowed down their their opportunity to really get in there.
Yeah,
because
there's no, you can listen. I mean, we can all be in a classroom all day
Yes.
and learn and take a written test and pass with flying colors. And it's like go out there and do what you just told, do what you were just told, and have it completely look lost. Especially at that wide receiver position where Sean Payton expects you to be in the right place at the right time. That's where I'm a little bit concerned. First off, can we just say that's a stupid rule? It really is. I mean, can we just get rid of that rule?
Because they're contacting the player anyway.
Right. I mean, come on. I understand the idea behind it, but it's probably long since time to get rid of that rule. But nonetheless, it's what they have to do. So I do think it's gonna be a transition, and I just, it's tough to not be able to get those guys on the field, getting those reps with the teammates, because you just there's no substitute for that at all.
David Onyemata was their fourth-round pick, traded 2 fifth-round picks to move up. No, 5 next year, 5 this year. A project player out of Canada. Just signed a contract this week. It was the Saints in their secret ways didn't tell us why. Some were speculating that it was because of a work visa coming from Nigeria, going to Canada now into the United States. But he's signed. Saints think they can get something out of him right away. Is that realistic?
I don't think so. I think that was a little more of a sell job after the draft, because they know that to trade up to get a guy no one's heard of, and a guy that's played in what is it called in the Canadian? It's CIB, or I don't know whatever the league was. I think that was a little more of a sell job. Maybe eventually he develops into a player, but at that position, even if you wait at 5, you can get a solid guard right there. At least fill depth in at that position. Of all the picks, that's the one. That's the biggest risk. By the way, I asked him about his contract. I saw him at the Touchdown Club Crawfish Boil.
Right.
He was pretty low key, but he didn't want to shed too many details about it. It must have been some sort of issue like that. I have no idea, but it's got done, so that's all that really matters. But Onyemata is a pick that I don't quite know that they see him as an end as well. I don't know if that's the case.
A 300-pound end, right?
Unless he wants to back up Cam Jordan, that's a risky move to me.
Right.
And we'll see if it works out.
Daniel Lasco, great year the year before he got injured at Cal. A guy that, if he can go back to the form that he had in his junior year at Cal, this guy could be a pretty good player. But yet a 7th-round pick, a flyer. Your thoughts? And a crowded backfield as well.
Yeah, crowded backfield. I think we'll get an opportunity. They like they did with the undrafted guys. They give them all equal chance to succeed. His ticket on is going to be through special teams, and it's funny, you think running back, a special teams guy, you think, okay, he's a return guy, but no, he's a gunner type, a block protection type, so that may help him. In the 7th round, you're looking for highest grade at that point. So we'll see if it works out, but as a 7th round pick, you got to keep your expectations tempered.
Sean, there was a lot of talk that the Saints had made some changes in the personnel department, that they had a different philosophy coming into the last couple of drafts, and that's why they felt like they've had some players stick around. I still say that it's the jury's out on last year's draft. The jury will be out on this year's draft. The Saints' problems are more salary cap related. You have to have players that don't cost a lot for the New Orleans Saints. That's why you see so many undrafted free agents making the team. That's why you see so many rookies making the team. They don't have the money to go out and get a veteran because of, again, mistakes they've made in the draft, mistakes they've made in free agency. So, again, I think that only time will tell this year, into next year, and the following year, if last year's draft is as good as we think it is, if this year's draft can be as good as we believe it can be down the line here. But targeted players versus best player available. Once again, we see the Saints trading picks to be able to target a player. How much do you think that philosophy has changed, if at all?
I thought it changed last year. I thought they kind of fell into their normal ways this year. I mean, not trade up not just once but twice. I thought Jeff Ireland really had a stronghold on the draft last year. This year he may have very well been a big aid in terms of players scouted,
yes.
But I don't know if they felt like this was a year they could be more aggressive because they had such a big class last year. And you add 9 plus 5, that's 14, and that's an average of 7. But I think you touched on an important point, because this year the only way they're successful is if that group from last year grows from year 1 to year 2.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. this team needs to be successful. It's the only thing that, when you look at everything else on this team, you say average, 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 average. You know, you got an elite quarterback, a couple elite players here and there, but if year one from rookies, from year one to year two from last year's rookie class can develop and improve and be players, then all of a sudden you may have a better team than you thought.
You had a chance to go to minicamp. Again, you know, there was no opportunity to see these guys at practice with the helmets and the shorts on. But you did get a chance to interview a few of these players, to talk a few of these players. Undrafted free agency has been gold for the Saints in some cases because they've had to bring them in the early years because they just struck gold with some really good players that have really contributed to again, that Super Bowl run. Talk about some of the players that you think may have an opportunity to make this team. I'll throw the names out for those that are tuning in right now. Riker Matthews, Avery Young, Joseph Cheek, Landon Turner, Jack Allen, Marcus Henry, all offensive linemen. Any of those players stick out to you?
Yeah, I think two of those guys right away. Sometimes it's hard because sometimes it's the UDFA you don't realize that jumps up and gets you. Because last year, I can recall, was it maybe Sean Hickey? He was a guy.
Yeah, he was the guy. Everybody thought out of Syracuse.
And he right. I don't think he lasted the first cut. But I look at Jack Allen. We had a chance to interview him. Definitely a workman type, rugged type player. At that position, a true center, I think that can certainly help. And if he can slide to play guard, that'll help his chances. Landon Turner obviously was the highest graded undrafted free agent that they got, and he slipped all the way down to the undrafted ranks. He has a chance to come in, and I've never said this about a guard, not just make the team, but it sounds to me like he has a chance to come in and truly compete for a job. Because, I mean, you have Calamete and you have Tim Alito to the guard spot. So those two really have a chance, and it depends on what you want to do with the tackle position.
Right.
A guy like Riker Matthews or Avery Young.
Yeah. Now, again, when you look at Jack Allen, the only real knock against him is his size.
I mentioned Sheldon Rankins.
Yeah.
It was the same exact thing with Jack Allen. They were just not very tall. So, I mean, big enough, but not tall.
Right. And again, with size means he could probably move to the guard position if necessary. But both Turner and Allen, former All-Americans.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing that blows your mind, that they were not drafted. In the wide receiver position, it was Jared Dangerfield, Jordan Williams, and Tommy Lee Lewis. Any of those guys stick out?
Nothing really sticks out about those guys in terms of, do I recall them in college or is it a great pick? But I will say wide receiver is a position where you have four guys that have a combined 4 years experience out of your top four. You may have a spot where you get 5 or 6 wide receivers. So one of those guys may actually have a chance if they perform.
You mentioned wide receiver. We're going to talk about veteran wide receivers that worked out for the Saints. We'll get into that in a moment. But then the secondary. Mike Caputo was cut this week out of Wisconsin. But Trey Elston, Devontae Harris, the cornerback out of Texas A&M. Only thing knock on him is his size. And then Ken Crawley out of Colorado.
Again, look at the depth chart at that position. When you talk about cornerback, you have Delvin Breaux, Keenan Lewis, who look like your top two corners, but Keenan Lewis is coming off of an injury. You have Damian Swan from last year with the head issues. You have P.J. Williams, who didn't play last year. Yes. They hope he develops, but maybe not. That's 4 right there. And you have Kyle Wilson, so maybe you do have room for a 6th corner. Or maybe you do have room for a Trey Elston. I think can play a little cornerback, nickel corner as well. So I think it's another spot. We're talking about possibly 3, 4, maybe even 5 undrafted free agents that have a legitimate shot at making this roster.
Which, again, one of the reasons why the Saints get the top undrafted free agents is they have a legitimate shot of making the team. And when you look at the roster, again, with the salary cap problems, not just because of the reputation of the Saints allowing these players to come in and compete, but just that need as well. Let's touch on the linebackers, then we'll go to the defensive line. Dominic Tavell out of UL Lafayette, Dylan Lee out of Alabama, Jeff Schottmeyer of North Carolina.
Seem to be a little bit loaded at the linebacker position, but that could be a spot where a veteran that might be a little expensive and doesn't quite beat out a younger player. Maybe one of those guys. Jeff Schottmeyer was a tackling guy, tackling machine at North Carolina. So, that's something to really watch as well because they're crowded at linebacker, but a guy like Robertson, Stupar, guys that they hope to contribute on special teams. If they don't perform or they get hurt or something, you never know what could happen.
Right. Two interesting guys on the defensive line where undrafted free agents have made bank with the Saints. DJ Petaway of Alabama and Mitchell Owen of Arkansas. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, they didn't address pass rush, right? So, again, you have Kasim Adebawale who was who was an undrafted free agent. You have Obum Gwacham on that end, and then you have obviously Kikaha and Davis Tull. So, yeah, I think they're going to be given a fair shot to make the roster, and we'll see what happens.
Sononi Homa is out of Michigan, a true fullback. Saints, one of the few teams that still kind of invite fullbacks to camp.
Maybe he has a shot. He'll have to beat out Austin Johnson, or even sometimes they'll let Josh Hill run that fullback position as well.
Let's talk about the pass rusher, because that's one thing they did not address. We've talked about over the last few weeks on this show. We've talked about on the radio show. Kakaha, you think now moves to a situational pass rusher?
He looked lost, a strong side linebacker in a 4-3. He's a guy that's good going forward. He's an effort player, has a nose for the ball, so you can use those traits to help, but he's not a elite first step guy. And you bring up pass rusher. The reason why I was so high on a guy like Spence or one of those disruptive type players was the whole world saw kryptonite for Superman and Cam Newton, right? That elite first step pass rusher. I mean, it got inside his head, and he was done by the second quarter of that game. You got to play Cam Newton twice a year, and I still am not convinced that they have the proper pass rusher on that side.
Can Kakaha develop into that guy? I mean,
I think
he was an elite pass rusher in college. Doesn't necessarily transition to the pros.
I see him as an effort guy. Look, when I see Cam Jordan, right? If you watch his sacks, he's a high motor guy, but usually his sacks come when the quarterbacks are on their second and third read. Okay. To complement that, you want a guy that's going to have that elite first step to where when the quarterback's at the top of his drop, oh no, I got a guy in the backfield.
Much like Junior Gillette was.
Much like Junior Gillette was. Why they worked so well together in 2013 until it all imploded. I don't see that elite first step with Kikaha. I see a similar motor. So can he get faster? Maybe. But can he get better with technique? Sure. But I just don't see an elite first step with him, and I think that's what they need on that side of the line.
We don't know a lot about Davis Toe, but we do know in his collegiate career that he was a pretty darn good pass rusher. He's had a year to digest his playbook. He should be able to come in, no pun intended, hit the ground running. Your thoughts?
Yeah.
Can he be that guy?
He flashed a little bit in the preseason where you said, oh, wow, okay, who was that in the backfield? You checked the number really quick because he got back there really fast. So he's a guy that I know they were high on when they drafted him, obviously, out of Chattanooga. He had some injury issues. Hopefully he's gotten that worked out because he's battled injuries throughout his career as well, college career. So I think he's got a little bit of that potential. He may even be a step quicker than Kikaha. But we'll see. I mean, it'd be foolish of us to say he's the next guy because we don't know at this point.
Edibali is Edibali at this point.
Yeah,
we
know who he is. Right, exactly.
Boy, a lot of rumbling within the last few weeks, especially since the Saints didn't go out and get a guard in either free agency or in the draft, that Andres Pete may be destined for that guard position. You broke his film down last week. Talk a little bit about Andres Pete. Do you think he'll play guard this year? And how do you think he will perform there based on what you saw in the small snapshot that you saw last season?
The best thing the Saints can do is, regardless of who they are, get the best 5 offensive linemen on the field. So if Andres Pete is not quite as skilled as a guard than he is as a tackle, but he gives you a better upside and is better than Senio Kelemete or Tim Lelito, you put him there. So to me, if I'm the Saints, I'm going into this thinking, okay, if he beats out Zach Strief, great. But if Zach Strief can still be the steady guy on the right side and Pete can contribute on the inside, that's an option I would certainly take. So I don't think it's for certain yet, but I think it's an option they have to seriously consider, because if Pete and Strief on the right side of that line is what's best for this offensive line, that's what it has to be.
Yeah, I would agree. ESPN writer Bill Barnwell today gave the Saints a D- on their offseason. He wrote the Saints are in denial about their problems. In some cases, I agree with some of the things that he wrote. What are your thoughts? Do you have a chance to read it?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to read it. I saw the tweet about it.
Right.
I think the Saints, I actually kind of like their approach because they took a moderate approach this offseason, right? I know they had a bit of a splash with Kobe Fleener.
By design or because of the lack of funds?
I think it was a lack of funds for one, but for two, they've swung for the fences and they've really missed when it came to Jarris Byrd, and that was really kind of an outlier for them anyway. They always like the Ben Watson, Keenan Lewis type value picks, free agency selection. So I'm not with that. I think when you add up the draft, which more meat than not necessarily a big sizzle there, and then when you add up the free agents, I think they got moderately better. I'm not going to give them a D minus. Was it a D minus?
Yeah.
I would probably give them a solid C to a C plus. I think they got marginally better. I don't know if they're ready to compete in the NFC South
And that's
yet.
overall free agency. I mean, that's Laurinaitis, that's Fairley, that's Kobe Fleener, that's their draft class. You know, they may have overpaid a bit for Fleener. But
that was the only one, though, really.
Well, you look at Laurinaitis and you look at Fairley, both are good contracts. The Saints are not in them for a long time if these players don't pan out. I thought they did a nice job with both those players, and there's a tremendous amount of upside if those players play well, they play up to their ability, while all of a sudden you're saying the Saints are geniuses.
I have this just feeling about just the presence of Laurinaitis alone it's not gonna make this a great defense, but I just think it's gonna be a little bit more of a properly aligned, organized defense, and I think that'll do wonders for this defense, just for the sheer fact that they're not going to be making the big mistake with a smart guy like that in the middle.
Right, and look, let's face it, they threw Stephon Anthony into that position last year. He was not ready for it. He was still trying to figure out how to be a linebacker in the NFL, much less getting guys in the proper position. You mentioned it multiple times on this show, on the radio show, as you went back and looked at film. I saw it myself. You know, got the last second. He's still trying to get guys in position. And at times, the smart quarterbacks were going right at those holes. And, of course, we saw major big plays out of that. And that, at least that part of it should be solved. Now Anthony can go out and he can be an athletic player, use that athleticism, just go full bore, which I think will make him a better player. And you got a cerebral player now in Laurinaitis in the middle, as long as he can hold up.
And here's the thing with Anthony. You know, you could tell because of some of the big plays, the big tackle for losses, the fumble recoveries, the big tackles, but some of the misses, some of the bust plays. He's a guy that was guessing a lot last year. He was guessing.
Agreed.
And I don't think that's going to happen with Laurinaitis. Now, you take a guy like that that's got that aggression and you put him at an aggressive position and you let a guy that's a little more watch, read, react in the middle, I think that works wonders for this defense. And I think I didn't quite get it at first when the news first came out, but now I really think that might be the best move of the entire offseason.
Right. And you know that Fleener, if healthy, is going to be effective.
He'll be
in this
productive.
offense.
He'll be productive. He'll be a red zone guy. I'm not in love with the contract either, but let's be honest, the salary cap went up. A lot of players got overpaid. So I think he'll do fine, and I think he'll be a productive player for this offense.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE with our live broadcast at 6 p.m. Also on Friday nights at 10 p.m. here on WLAE, and on Friday nights across the state on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 p.m. every Friday night. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll be right back after these messages from our underwriters.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is on our panel tonight. Sean, the Saints worked out veteran receivers this week. Hakeem Nicks, for the second time. Vincent Brown, Denarius Moore, Nathan Palmer. Some you may know. Brown and Nicks would be the two that you probably would remember. Of course, I think Brown was with the San Diego Chargers, the Oakland Raiders, and of course Nicks, longtime New York Giant. Your thoughts? Anything out of that, or just more?
My thoughts are simply this: they want a veteran presence at that position. As I mentioned earlier in the show, Brandon Cooks, Willie Snead, Brandon Coleman, Michael Thomas are your presumably your top 4 receivers, right? That's 4 years of NFL experience. So I don't think it would hurt to get a veteran on the cheap. The guy that sticks out to me is Hakeem Nicks. He was productive. Had 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in 2010 and 2011 with the Giants. All that tells me is that they are still looking to possibly add a veteran to that mix. He may not even make the team like Josh Morgan last year, but with Marcus Colston now gone, you could certainly use one.
Josh Scobie is at the Players' Championship. He's talking about the fact that he thinks it's going to be a fair tryout for both him and Kai Forbath. He gets cut this week.
Yeah, that's
it was kind of weird.
It's weird because I actually think if you look at Scobie's career, he's been a very good kicker and he was available. And Kai Forbath has done nothing to show he should be anointed the position. One or two things stick out with that. Either A, Connor Barth really knocked their socks off at the with his tryout this past weekend at the rookie minicamp, or B, there's another move they're trying to make, and maybe they're possibly going to bring Josh Scobie back. But you know, Eric, between Forbath and Hawker last year, they missed 8 field goals and 2 extra points. Now, in the NFL, games are decided by 7 points or less all the time. So those points that were left off the table, that's a way right there this team can get better if you can just tighten that up. And to roll the dice with just Forbath, they're going to add a kicker at some point. There's no way they're just going to keep Forbath.
There's no doubt. Last week, Tom Condon, Drew Brees' agent, said that the Saints are content, at least he believes, to have Brees play under the $30 million salary cap figure. We've debated this all off season long. You know, for the viewers of this show, the listeners to my radio show know that, you know, I felt all along they should have gotten a deal done early. It would have given them an opportunity to maybe go out and sign some other free agents. They did not do it. Was that a shot across the bow by Condon? Was that? What was that? Does he really feel that's that? What do you think happened there?
Yeah, it's hard to make heads or tails of that because it kind of. You would think on the surface it sounds like Condon kind of throwing that out there to maybe, you know, hey, we're still here with this extension, and just in case you forgot. But I shift to the other side. I just look at this whole saga, and I think we all, even Sean Payton, kind of maybe underestimated Mickey Loomis in this whole thing, and maybe he was never going to do a deal that he did not think was team-friendly. Who knows how far those extension talks got. Not only that, he was also going to make sure that he got what they needed without having to touch that contract, which he got help with the boost in the salary cap, and they were able to make some modest restructures to get that done. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it wasn't crippling. So I think at the end of the day, Loomis basically said or decided that they were not going to do a deal that was going to hurt this team down the road, and they played this thing out. I still think an extension gets done at some point, though.
866-3200 is the phone number. If you'd like to get involved in tonight's show, Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports, is our guest. The city will be going to Charlotte next week, a contention from the city to bid on the 2019 Super Bowl. They consider it a long shot at best. Atlanta, Los Angeles, Miami are the favorites for the 19th, 20, and 21 Super Bowls, respectively. You know, I had Jeff Duncan on the program today, and we've talked about this. You and I have talked about this with the improvements to Sun Life Stadium, of course, that we know well from when the Saints were at the Super Bowl, did the Super Bowl there. $400 million of Stephen Ross's own money into that facility. Also, you look at the upgrades now at the Superdome, about $30 million in upgrades, the video and scoreboards. The question is, will the city have an opportunity to get another Super Bowl before the Saints' contract with the city is up, with the state is up, rather?
Look, I know how confident that group was, that contingent was when they walked into, I believe it was Atlanta a couple years back. I was there.
For 18, right?
For 18.
Right.
I mean, they thought they had it. They thought 300 years. They were 10 for 10 at that point. Right. And the presentation was good. I mean, they had it. And so I do not feel that level of confidence at all from this group this time around. Maybe that helps in their favor. Look, they can dress it up and try to tweak presentations and this and that as much as they want. The bottom line is we all know what they're selling.
Right.
They're selling proximity, they're selling logistics, and they just have to hope that maybe they can possibly sell, you know what, Atlanta can still get one in 2020. Miami can still get one in 2021. LA can get it in 2022. And just push that back a year and let New Orleans have this 19 because if they don't get it now, I guess it would be 2022 would be the earliest they could even bid again, and if that even happens. So I don't think it's going to happen. It is a long shot. They are an underdog, but crazier things have happened, so we'll see.
The city will host the 2020 College Football Championship, so the NFL will not allow the College Championship and the Super Bowl to be played in the same stadium in the same year. 2021 is out because Mardi Gras is the same time as the Super Bowl.
There's a convention
Plus,
as
there's
well.
a major automotive convention that's in town, comes in about once every 5 years, and there's no way the city was going to lose out on that, Super Bowl or not. So really, it's going to have to come down to, I think, a passion plea by Tom Benson to be able to try to say, look, we understand that the Atlanta Mercedes-Benz Stadium will be opening in 2019, but give us an opportunity to have that 19, as you mentioned, push everyone back. And I really believe now, when you look at that rotation, it will be once in a decade before the city gets a Super Bowl. It's no longer going to be once every 5, once every 7 years. It'll be once every 10 years.
Well, the good news is this run on new stadiums is going to dry up eventually, within the next couple of years, and the Saints can certainly help themselves if there were ever plans down the road of New Orleans can certainly help themselves. If there were plans down the road of ever building a new stadium, that would guarantee you one whenever that happened. They've set this precedent where the second a new stadium is available to have a Super Bowl be played there, they give it to that stadium, and really it's a little bit unnecessary because what Atlanta's going to do in 2019, they can do in 2020.
Right.
It's almost like just because it's first year eligible doesn't mean it has to happen that year. But these guys, they take care of their own. So it's kind of the precedent that's been set.
And I believe that Atlanta is also hosting the Final Four for college basketball in 2020 as well. So I know there's a thought process, at least with maybe the contention from New Orleans, to say, hey, let them be the, epicenter. Someone sent me a text earlier today. Let them be the epicenter of the sports world in 2020. Give us 19, because we won't be able to see another Super Bowl until maybe 2022 or beyond. Let's head to the phone lines. Then I want to talk a little bit about the Pelicans. I want to talk about high school football going to Zephyr Field, and also want to get into college baseball before the show is up tonight. Tahoma and Greg. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. Just got a question for you guys about the national perspective of the New Orleans Saints. I can't ever remember where they give the Saints any good love, and I just want to hear your opinions on, is there any rationale to it, or what's going on? I don't understand why we don't get any type of respect over the years, even after we won the Super Bowl. Right. And I'll hang up and listen to the opinion.
Thank you. I thought the Saints got respect after the Super Bowl.
Look, the shine's off right now. The back-to-back 7-9 seasons, you're not going to get big-time games. You're not going to get big-time love from the national analysts. They had a pretty, like I said, I use the word a lot, moderate offseason. And a lot of fans thought that it's so hard to quantify that. Okay, well, who's getting respect? Who's not getting respect after they won the Super Bowl? Right. Is it enough respect? But I think right now that they're a 7-9 team, back-to-back 7-9 seasons, and you're not going to get a whole lot of respect from the national analysts in that regard.
And look, even though national analysts kind of look at it holistically, they're not really engaged like we are with player by player. They see it now. They lived off the 2006 draft for a long time. Then they were living off the 2009 Super Bowl. And this team just has not gotten appreciably better every single year.
And other teams got better.
They did.
Caught up.
Teams around them that built through the draft, that didn't make mistakes in free agency, have passed the Saints now. And it's a fact of life. The Saints now need to prove that they're in a position to be able to go out and to at least compete for the division this year, and maybe get into the playoffs, even as a wild card. If that can happen, then I think more people start paying attention to the Saints, because it's been a transition in terms of the turnover in the roster.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think when I look at this team, because I've been asked this a lot, what do you think? We were 7-9 last year. I still think they're a 7, 8, 9 win team in that range. If they can play a little bit better on these games, and if they can get that growth from year 1 to year 2 from last year's rookie class, then maybe you got a team that's battling for a playoff spot, but you got to show some improvement. There's no doubt about it.
To Kenner and Larry. Larry, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Larry.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for taking the call.
Thank you for calling.
Sean, how you been, buddy?
How you doing?
I'd like to say happy birthday to Archie Manning, but I got a 2-point question for both of y'all. Either one of y'all can answer it. Who do y'all think is going to be the breakout defensive captain, and who do y'all think is going to be Drew Brees' favorite target? And please, everybody, keep Hoagie Gajan and Will Smith to have family in y'all prayers. Thank you. Who that nation, go Saints.
Thank you, Larry.
He said defensive captain.
captains,
I
yeah.
think it's gonna be Laurinaitis. I think he's kind of he kind of assumes that role. He's got the skins on the wall. I think he's a well-respected guy. I mean, gladiator. He's never missed a. He's never missed a game.
No, agreed.
Knock on wood there.
Yes.
I think potentially the best player. Yeah. I look at a guy like Fairley that's got a little bit of edge to him. Rankins can come in and be a player, and obviously Cam Jordan is a guy that's extremely productive. Offensively, I think Breeze's number one target now shifts to Brandon Cooks.
Right.
I think he kind of became that last year, but I still think he's his number one guy.
To Harvey and Errol. Errol, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Errol.
Yes, how you doing?
Welcome to the show. Thank you.
All right, I want to ask y'all a question. You don't think that the New Orleans Saints focus so much on Drew Brees and Sean Payton and not enough on the team?
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, we got you.
Yep.
All right. I mean, they're the face of the franchise. So, I mean, a lot of
look,
cases.
they didn't touch Drew Brees' contract,
Right.
so
You know,
I don't know.
and Sean Payton got a 5-year extension through
Yeah.
2020, $9.5 million. Now the highest paid, once again, the highest paid coach in the league. Let's shift gears to I'll tell you what. Let's go to the phone lines for a couple more calls, and we'll shift gears to the Pelicans. To Chalmette and David. David, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, how you guys doing? You guys are doing a tremendous job, and I watch you guys all the time.
Thank you, David.
And my point to you guys, you might disagree or agree. In football, the strength of a team starts with center core. The center core is your LBs. The D-line is okay, but not great. Forget about the free safety, cornerbacks, and strong safety. That's it. I need to see the Saints be like the Dawn Patrol with the Swillings and the Jacksons of back in the days, and they got those linebackers. The key is for those defensive coaches to train them in the correct manner. And that's it, guys. And I want your comment on that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
They went out of their way to upgrade the linebacker position.
Yeah, that was clearly a position that they targeted, and I'll agree with him. You see better front seven play. You watch how good this secondary is. I am of the opinion that this is one of the best kept secrets in the NFL. I think this can be a very good, almost top-notch secondary in the NFL if they could just get some help on the front seven.
And stay healthy.
Yeah,
which is one of the keys. Toby is in Gretna. Hey, Toby, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about high school football at Zephyr Field, but also I want to get your thoughts at maybe having a couple high school games at Tulane Stadium. I'll hang up and listen to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. I think there would have to be a change in the agreement with the neighborhood to allow any high school football at the new Tulane Stadium. When they were building this, one of the things that went on in the negotiations were that they were not going to allow high school football to be played there. They weren't going to have concerts there. It would have to be a softening of the neighborhood association, in my opinion, to allow that to happen. But really great news about Zephyr Field. The Catholic League are going to play, I believe, 8 games this year at Zephyr Field.
Great move, long overdue. You know, Catholic League has such a strong tradition, but they don't get to partake in the national high school tradition, which is Friday night football, because you only have one stadium that's available to them on Friday nights, and that's Tad Gormley. So they usually have to get either Tad. So you only have 2 teams that play at Tad Gormley on Friday night, and then you also have to do those games on Saturday night, and then where Rummel and Shaw play at their respective stadiums, they have to wait to Saturday because the Jefferson Parish schools get first dibs at those stadiums.
Right.
However, adding Zephyr Field to this, really, it gets them exposure to Friday night football. For instance, last year Rummel was the number 1 team in the state most of the season, really throughout the playoffs until the state championship game. By the time October got there, we didn't have them on Fox 8 Football Friday because they were always playing on Saturday. That's the number 1 team in the state that we could never get on our show. So now we'll get more games, marquee games that aren't going to get lost in the college football shuffle.
And I think it's great that they are starting to utilize that stadium outside of the Zephyr baseball, which, by the way, the Zephyrs will be changing their name, which will probably mean the change in the name ultimately of the stadium. Hopefully they'll get some naming rights for that. But again, between the concerts that they're playing now and now high school football utilizing that stadium, I think it'd only be a good thing for Jefferson Parish and a great thing now for the Catholic League as well.
Yeah, and you know, it kind of makes you wonder what took this so long. And I heard rave reviews about, was it the Mumford and Sons concert that I
Yes.
think they maybe even surprised themselves with that, how much success they had. So I think it's a great thing for local high school football, because on Saturdays, there's a 7 o'clock high school football game on a Saturday. Everyone's mind is on LSU, Tulane.
Right.
College football is at the top of the mind.
Absolutely. And look, a lot of that has to do with new ownership of the Zephyr baseball team and getting that done. Let's head back to the phone lines. Ed is in Kenner. Ed, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Ed.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys.
Thanks for calling.
The question I have is about Ellaby. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Ellaby, I noticed, if I'm right, I think he played in 6 games, and I know out of the 6 games, I think we won 5 of them, and the defense looked a lot better. And the question I was saying, what I want to ask is, don't you think, let's see, the linebacker that we just picked up, we're just talking about from the Rams, wouldn't he be the same type of a person who would be able to put the guys all in position to where, to where Anthony, like you said, Anthony couldn't do it? And I'll hang up and listen, guys.
2 guys playing 2 different positions, first of all, right?
Correct. And I think one gets you in line, makes all the calls. But he's right about Donnell Ellerbe. The difference in that defense with him was night and day. Excuse me, too bad he only got to play 6 games. If he's better this year, that's another thing where you can say, wow, okay, that's an unknown. But if he comes back healthy, maybe he makes a difference. And I like the idea of having Laurinaitis there because for all the reasons we just said. And then Ellerbe is a very good weak side linebacker that can make plays, and he's productive, and the results speak for themselves.
Right, and of course now you move Anthony to the strong, so all of a sudden you got 2 athletic guys kind of flanking Laurinaitis, who's been a tackling machine during his time in the NFL. Not to mention a very cerebral player and a leader, and a true leader, a vocal leader on that defense as well. Shift gears to the Pelicans for a few minutes. The Pelicans get the 6th pick in the NBA draft. Most draft nicks that have been looking at this right now are saying that maybe Buddy Hield out of Oklahoma, the sharpshooter out of Oklahoma, or Chris Dunn, who was a very good point guard out of Providence, will be there at 6 for the Pelicans. I think Hield's going to go a little bit earlier. I really think he may go 3, 4, or 5. He's that good of a player. Chris Dunn may shoot up the board as well. Your thoughts on who would you like to see the Pelicans go with?
Hield.
What are their needs?
Hield. Give me a guy that can put the ball in the basket and that is fearless when doing it. Point guard position, look, I think Drew is serviceable in that regard, Drew Holiday.
Right.
But, Eric Gordon's free agent, Ryan Anderson, free agent. So Buddy Hield is a guy that's fearless. He can knock down shots. He's seasoned. He's played a lot of college basketball. And he convinced me when he played LSU. The last 4 minutes of that LSU game, he was all over the floor. Ben Simmons was nowhere to be found. So if you got a chance to get that guy, I say bring him in. Hopefully they just get someone that can make an impact because the franchise needs something right now to feel good about it. The tone from that franchise is just it's so just weird, for lack of a better term, and are they into this? Are they into this? Because you just don't feel it sometimes.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. Still no word on Dell Demps' future. I had Sean Devaney of the Sporting News, a national NBA writer with some ties to New Orleans. He started his career in Slidell with a weekly newspaper, now writes for the Sporting News. He said that the Pelicans are not a priority with the Benson management team. That's the vibe that he's getting around the country. And he called this roster dented cans. Dented cans. Because of the injuries that they had and the fact that they didn't go out last year and tried to at least upgrade the roster instead because of salary constraints, of bad moves that were made, much like you've seen with the Saints, you've seen the same thing with the Pelicans. They were in a situation where they re-signed their own, and now they've got an albatross around their neck. Much like they had an albatross around their neck with the Eric Gordon contract when they matched that contract with Phoenix a few years back. By the way, Eric Gordon, an unrestricted free agent, that is over. They've got the same problem now with Omer Sheik. They've got him for 4 more years, really 3, because the last year is not guaranteed. I think it's around $9 million a year, And for a guy that doesn't fit the system, for a guy that skills are diminished, he's going to be a tough player to be able to move. If the national writers are saying that you've got a roster of dented cans, and the national writers are saying that the Pelicans are an afterthought with the Benson management team, what does that say to the fans here in the city that want to see quality basketball? What does that say to Anthony Davis?
Yeah, and when I read a tweet that Dell Demps had turned down an interview request, I forget where he was. It was a local writer that had tried, and it's like, I mean, do you even buy? I mean, do you not see the importance of this? I mean, they canceled the end of year press conference. You're doing work like you're still going to be the GM, so have the normal end of year press conference to at least let your fan base know what you have in plan. What did we learn? What are we looking forward to? What was this? What are we going to do with that? Nothing. Silence. I mean, that is just, to me, you can't blame the fans for being apathetic at this point.
No, you can't. And look, you got a month now before the draft. You're seeing teams that are adding coaches that don't have coaches. You're seeing teams that are getting ready. Because shortly after that, it's free agency. So, it looks like right now, from all indications, Dell Demps is staying. And we still don't know what the length of his contract is. And, again, I don't think he's done anything to merit getting another year. But the organization seems to be going status quo. Well, college baseball has been as good as it's ever been in the state of Louisiana. Sean, with the limited time we have left, we got about 3 minutes left. How many teams do you think have a real shot at the postseason? How many teams do you think have a real shot at ultimately hosting a regional going forward?
LSU, obviously, hosting. Tulane, if they can make a run here.
It's a big series against Houston this weekend.
Big series. I like UL and I like SLU to obviously make it to the postseason. And the thing about LSU is, if I could just talk about them for a second, they're very raw. Yeah. They're very talented, but they don't know what they're doing quite yet.
Still young.
Sometimes it's base running errors. Sometimes it's fielding errors. And sometimes they don't hit it with the same consistency. A lot of people have been on Alex Lang and Poche, but I think of last year. I think of Alex Bregman making plays in the hole and how many runs that saves. Stevenson in center field, Layard out in the outfield as well. How much that helps galvanize a pitcher and gives them confidence, and they don't have that this year. But they're figuring out a way. It's not quite as clean as in years past, but all of a sudden they're on a 9-game win streak. Right. Huge series this weekend. So
against number one Florida.
Against number one Florida.
Right.
And Tulane, you get nothing but respect for the way David Pierce runs that crew in year number 2. So those two schools, I hope that if they earn the spot, that they don't have to face each other in the Super Regional if that happens.
Interesting, I had Jeff Duncan on today, and he had mentioned, and I heard the whispers as well, that Texas may be calling for David Pierce. Hopefully Tulane has a chance to be able to hold on to Pierce. Pierce, obviously, with Texas ties. Tough to be able to compete with the University of Texas if they come a-calling. But what he's been able to do in turning that program around, and give a lot of credit to Blake Dean out at UNO.
Oh, great.
What he has been able to do as well.
That's a guy that's basically, he knows he's short on numbers, but he basically just said, let it rip. And they play with fearlessness. They play with nothing to lose. They play aggressive. They play like, and it works. And he knows he's one injury away from it all falling apart, but he's managed to keep it going and letting these guys believe that they can get the job done, and probably playing a little bit better than their talent allows them to. But sometimes that happens in baseball.
We've become accustomed to ULL being a national in the tournament and a national power. Don't fall asleep on SLU. Quietly, they have a great sports program in Hammond.
Yeah, that's a team. It's funny when you watch them in midweeks. They always come to play.
Yes.
They always come to play, and obviously they made the run through the Southland Conference. I think they're still in first place, if I'm not mistaken. So, Matt, that's a great program, and it's very steady. They utilize the resources that they have.
No doubt about it. Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports, thanks so much for being with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, statewide on Pelican Sports Television, 9 p.m. every Friday night. You can catch me on the radio, 990 a.m. WGSO, weekdays 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. Also, you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. You can catch every episode of the award-winning Inside New Orleans Sports at ericasher.com as well. Don't forget about that TuneIn Radio app. It's a free download for your smartphone or your tablet as well. Again, special thanks to our guest, Sean Fazende, as well as to the WLE production staff including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, Philip Williamson, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll catch you right back here next Thursday night for another edition. My name is Eric Asher. Have a great weekend.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.